Anton Torello's son, Carl Torello. He was the one that was hit in the head by a baseball bat.
He was?
His dad, Anton, the story goes, used to hit him over the head with a baseball bat if he didn't play something right.
Wow, that is old school.
Yeah, we went from Barbaroli, who was Sir John. He came out one day and he wore suspenders on his pants, and he came out one day and he was beaten away and his pants just fell, down around his knees. All I wanted to do was get back into an orchestra. And
what did you miss about it?
I missed the funny little guys up there with the 10-inch stick.
Welcome to another episode of Contrabass Conversations, your show covering life on the low end of the spectrum. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and as you heard from that opening clip, we are chatting with Curtis Burris, and you are going to love this episode. I ran into Curtis at ISB 2017 on the street. I was walking with Kate Jones and ran into both Curtis and Virginia Dixon, who, by the way, happened to be at Interlochen at the same time back in the day. So we set up a time to talk with Curtis the next day, and Kate and Kyle Augustine were actually sitting in on the interview as I chatted with Curtis. And as we chatted, in addition to these fantastic stories, and you're going to be hearing more of them, Curtis and I have this weird amount of overlap in our lives. We both went to Northwestern. We both taught at DePaul. We both played in the Lithuanian Opera, of all things, in Chicago. We both subbed in the Lyric Opera and Grand Park Symphony. And we both played in Milwaukee, although he was in the Symphony and I played in the ballet. It's just amazing how the paths of two people who've never met in the past can intersect in so many different ways. You're going to love hearing from Curtis. It was a major thrill to sit down with him and chat. I had a great time, and I know you will too. And before we get going with our conversation with Curtis, I'd love to have you check out D'Addario Strings, who, by the way, is a major sponsor for ISB 2017, hosting the after party events that were so much fun. It was great chatting with the team there. And D'Addario's been a Contrabass Conversation sponsor for the better part of a year at this point, actually. They are giving away 10 sets of their Kaplan strings to Contrabass Conversations listeners. Enter. If you haven't entered yet, enter to win a chance. That's contrabassconversations.com/strings. I've been using Kaplan's, and I really enjoy how they feel, how they sound, their response. They are used by so many artists like Klaus Freudenstein, who, by the way, I'm going to be hanging out with here in San Francisco as he makes his way back to Germany. They're used by Anthony Stoops, Andres Martin, David Allen Moore, Gabriele Raggiante, Michael Valerio. By the way, those are just some people that have been on the podcast. Kurt Muroki, another former podcast guest, uses them. And I love them. Check them out, and thanks for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you also to the Bass Violin Shop. If you're looking for a setup, repair, or restoration, you can get it at a reasonable price. They also reset necks, they repair cracks, they install new fingerboards, new bass bars, custom C extensions. Get good work done, get the most out of your instrument without blowing your budget, and you can find them at bassviolinshop.com. Okay, here we go with our conversation with Curtis Burris. My youth orchestra director went to Chautauqua for years and years and just told me all about you go to the lectures and play in the orchestra. His name is Ray Sidoti, Ray and Sue Sidoti. But they haven't played for a while, but they still go and attend as audience members and just rave about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Was he played in the Chautauqua Symphony, or?
I think so. I'll have to ask him and see what he did.
Uh-huh.
But he was somebody who just every summer they would take off and go to Chautauqua and spend some time
From
there.
where?
He worked all over the place, but he ended up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, of all places.
Wow.
And
Is that where you're from?
That's where I'm from. Yeah, the cold Arctic tundra of the Dakotas.
Well, were you there when the National Symphony?
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
It came and played.
Right.
And so that hall that they played in, I went to high school in that hall. That was my high school auditorium. And they were going to that building. They were not sure if they were going to demolish it or what, but they took it and they gutted the interior and built this fabulous hall. I mean, it's really a nice hall. You must have...
Is that when we were there?
Yeah, it was when you were there, because you wouldn't have come there with the hall we had before. It was
We
just a
played
bar.
some pretty raunchy places.
Was that when the orchestra, because the National Symphony, I mean, you went everywhere,
Yep.
right? Did you go to even Alaska and Hawaii?
Yeah, Alaska was the first place we went to
Okay,
as part of our National Symphony.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know if they finished all 120 states or not.
Yeah.
I'm sure they didn't go to Hawaii.
No, but they all wanted to go to
Too
Hawaii.
much.
Yeah, that'd be way too much fun.
But Alaska was the first one, and they split up into really small groups and went to Barrow and all these places.
Well, I mean, that was like the talk of the town in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. National Symphony coming. I mean, people were so proud that was such a great event, and then they got such positive feedback on the hall. I mean, it really helped the city, the whole city, not just the arts. It was I just think it's so cool that's been a mission of the National Symphony. I mean, really, that was really cool to the people from like us in those out of the way flyover states.
Well, that was the idea, was to be a national orchestra, so I think it helped a lot of states, because the politicians would get involved and
right.
It was great fun.
So we ran into Curtis and Kate and I, we ran into each other on the street yesterday, and you started to tell about when you were Ormandy and the Philadelphia Orchestra, and you see I've got my long hair and I wouldn't have flown in those days, right? Did you had to cut your hair to get tenure in Philadelphia? Is that right?
Yes. I had to. I wore a lot of turtleneck sweaters in those days. So I would, if I had a ponytail, then I would stick it down in the turtleneck.
Oh, so they didn't know.
Well, I didn't think Ormandy knew, but as it turns out, he knew.
He knew. Okay.
But there were 6 new players when I started in 1971.
71 is when you started? Oh, right out of Northwestern you started.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, I won the position in 71, and I guess I actually started in the season of 72.
Okay.
And but we had 6 new players, and everybody got tenure around Thanksgiving except me.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, this is...
Why? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that bad, am I? And the evening of the day that the other players were taken off probation, I got a call from my teacher, Warren Benfield, and he said, I got a call from... These are old, famous names, but Anton Torello's son, Carl Torello, was still in the orchestra then.
Okay.
He was the one that was hit in the head by a baseball bat.
He was?
His dad, Anton, the story goes, used to hit him over the head with a baseball bat if he didn't play something right.
Wow, that is old school.
Yeah. But so Carl Torello called Warren Benfield and said, if your boy wants this job, he's going to have to shave and cut his hair. And Mr. Benfield said, now, they can't make you do this. But if you want this job, you're going to have to cut your hair and shave. And I just remember, after much consternation, deciding to go in the next morning. I went to the barber shop and got a shave and cut my ponytail off, and I'll be darned if I didn't get called in at intermission of that rehearsal, and Mr. Armandy said, well, now that you've cut your hair, I'm welcoming you to the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Wow.
And the rest was history. You young whippersnappers, got it so easy now.
We do have it so easy. It's like a totally different world, right? Like how did even the audition process work? Because was that when you'd get Benfield would say, I have a student, you got to check him out? How did that work for you?
Well, it wasn't that nepotistic, but they announced the audition, but it was a solo of your choice, and then the audition repertoire was 3 words, standard audition material, and that was the only information you had. And of course, being well trained, as we all were, it was, you knew that you had to play, you'd have like maybe 4 Beethoven symphonies and 3 or 4 Mozart symphonies, and, a couple of Brahms symphonies, and all of Einheldenleben and all of, these, the standard literature.
Right.
And you'd walk in, and there it went.
So it was just on the stand there when you got. Okay.
None of this measure, 42 to 81 or whatever.
Number 9 to number 11, Einheldenleben, not specified.
Nothing like that. No, It was a standard audition material.
Okay.
And
no screen.
no screen. Actually, no, that's not true. The first round, because it had been a very nepotistic situation in the bass section.
Okay.
Well, not just the bass section. The Curtis Institute was producing everybody, all the string players that got in the orchestra up to a certain point, and I was the first bass player to get into the orchestra that didn't go to Curtis.
Was that a difficult experience once you got there? Because it's such an insular community, our people get in here, and then there's this Northwestern Benfield
with that long hair.
With that long hair he's not cutting. Those Chicago hippies invading Philadelphia.
I was known as the love child of the Philadelphia Orchestra for years, and but yeah, it was, so they, it was, there had been so many complaints about it that for this audition, they did put a screen up for the preliminaries, and the president of the union, of the local, was there to hear all the preliminaries, and I was in the running with some pretty fine players, and I remember playing my preliminary round and going to take a nap, and they said, come back at 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever it was, and we'll announce the next round. And so I sort of got out of bed and went to the Academy of Music, and it was like they announced it by, the personnel manager announced the second round of players, and it was, and Curtis Burris, and it was like, you're next, and it was like, I just woke up. I can't play yet. But I learned how to play with just a simple warm-up of a 3-octave G major scale.
That was your warm-up?
That was my warm-up, yeah. And I used that many more times,
Get the bass ringing, nice open string key.
Oh, yeah.
With the fingers moving.
Yeah, that was it. But and it was just one round. The final round was no screen, and Ormandy was there, and we played once. They chose me, and for years it was like, I think they made a mistake. Are you sure?
My only impression of Ormandy is like looking at these old cassette tapes that my mom had of Philly and Ormandy and this conductor, and looking at what was he like as a conductor? Was he like that old school, what I think of Toscanini like dictatorial, or what was Ormandy like?
Well, I have an old saying that I'm sure all my students heard, which is, the only good conductor is a dead conductor. So I got that from the Ormandy years, but he was short.
He was short?
Yeah, so...
Did he stand on a tall podium, or did he...
Well, I remember going in when I was taken off probation, then they finally did a publicity photo of the 6 of us that were the new players, and I was standing next to him, and he pulled my arm down, and he said, "You're too tall." He didn't say anything, "You're too hairy," because I wasn't too hairy then, but he had real issues about tall people.
Oh, interesting.
But after I got taken off probation, then I went directly to growing another beard and letting my hair grow out. And all of the beards were in one location on the stage. It was the trombone players and a couple of percussion players.
Okay.
And
not the first violinists. Not a lot of beards in the first violinists.
No, they wouldn't dare. It was because he could just scare you to death. I mean, he could literally look, and 15 or 20 people would say, "God, he just stared me down," and somebody else would say, "No, he was looking at me," and somebody else would say, "No, he was looking at me for sure," with just one gaze.
So something goes awry in the concert, and would that head turn and the stare would happen? It would happen in concerts?
Yeah, he was. He could terrorize anybody on stage, and it was his control mechanism, and people were really terrified of him. But thank God for the concertmaster, Norman Carroll. He was able to really control the orchestra when Ormandy had lost all control. It may still happen.
Yeah.
But
what would he do to keep control? Just keep tempers from rising, or try to handle Ormandy somehow, or what?
Well, you just knew that's who you followed.
Okay. Oh, got it. Okay.
It was, the guy on the podium just had a little stick, but the concertmaster had the control.
Okay.
And he used it well, took matters into his own hands, and it's all about the way he moved and stuff like that. But the other thing was string players were trained to watch the principal player, and you didn't really want to go against them. There was a hierarchy that was very strong in the great orchestras.
So you're watching that principal player
with one eye.
With one eye. Okay.
And then the concertmaster with another eye, and then somewhere you found another eye because you really had to make sure that Ormandy thought you were watching him.
Okay.
And
so look up every once in a while, or when you knew that he'd be looking at you?
Well, yeah. I mean, you just knew it was, I think the first week I was in there, it was like the directions from Roger Scott, the principal bass then, was, all you have to do is look like you're playing, just let the bow go in the right direction, and, don't worry about anything else. You just have to look like you're playing. And so it's the art of faking. Whoops. You didn't hear that.
How long were you there before you went to the National Symphony?
Oh, God, I did so many things in between.
Yeah.
I left just before I was 30 years old.
Okay. Oh, wow. And, young. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had already been to the Interlochen Arts Academy in high school.
That's where you met Virginia Dixon, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you were in school together?
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I think it was a summer camp with Virginia, but John Deek was my teacher.
What was he like as a teacher?
Very sort of esoteric, and he was a great teacher, but I think he was just trying to stay out of the draft.
Okay.
As I recall, it's like, if I don't teach, I'm going to get drafted, so make me look good. But I did 2 years of summer camp and the Arts Academy.
Yeah.
And then I went from there to Houston, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and played with the Houston Symphony, or get drafted. Yeah, I was in school because I would have gotten drafted, but I studied with Hal Robinson's father.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Paul Ellison was there. And
what was that orchestra like? I always heard that was like a little bit of a rowdy orchestra than some others, talking to people. I don't know if it was like that when you were there, but what was that orchestra like?
Well, that was, I was in the period when Sir John Barbaroli handed the baton to Andre Previn.
Okay.
And so it was an amazing kind of time. You had the Iman Urahog sisters, and Houston was just coming into its own.
Okay.
But it had been an orchestra that like I said, I was in the right place at the right time. Well, I think it was so hard for people to get to audition. They found a lot of the most talented people in the neighborhood, and we got jobs. And hope that's not insulting. But yeah, we went from Barbaroli, who was Sir John, and he used to have a shot of scotch in all the rehearsals, at the intermissions.
The intermission. It's a good way to get ready for the second half.
Yeah.
Loosen things up.
Yeah. He came out one day and he wore suspenders on his pants, and he came out one day and he was beaten away and his pants just fell, down around his knees.
No.
It was like, he didn't, I don't think he even stopped conducting. He just...
Pants on the floor?
Yeah, he just sort of reached down and pulled them up. But we did a U.S. tour, which is maybe the first tour the Houston Symphony did with Previn. Mm-hmm. And everybody was expecting Andre Previn, the jazz pianist.
Yeah.
So we'd show up in all these little towns. I remember Tulsa, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. People just the concerts had sold out pretty well, and people found out it was an orchestra.
Oh no!
And everybody went back for refunds.
Really?
Yeah, because they wanted to hear Andre Previn, Mia Farrow's husband, and the famous jazz player. But those were the days.
Well, he must have been such a contrast to Barbaroli, I would imagine. Anyway, was that a shocking experience, like that music director shift?
Yeah, because I don't think he was exactly trained for that job.
Okay.
It was his name recognition really got him into that situation.
Yeah.
But those were early days in the arts of Texas.
Yeah. It's changed a lot over the years.
Yeah. Well, from there, I went to study with Benfield.
So that was post-Houston. You went to Northwestern. Right. Okay.
Because I was thinking, I was a full-time student and playing in the Houston Symphony and just starting to feel burnt out. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I'll just go study for a while. And then went to Chicago and wound up being the number one freelancer and still being in school or get drafted.
Yeah.
And
what was the freelance scene like in Chicago at that time? I'd love to know. Like, what sort of work were you doing?
I remember doing the Lithuanian Opera Society.
I flipped the Lithuanian Opera. It's still going. They wheel these Lithuanian players that only play the Lithuanian Opera once a year. And their violins, like from the attic, and they play. It's the strangest gig. You're hearing like La Boheme in Lithuanian.
Yeah, or something. In Lithuanian. We did some actual Lithuanian operas, but. I also played in the in lyric opera.
Okay.
And in Grant Park. Mm-hmm. And it was like, wait a minute, I thought I was just going to study bass. And I wound up freelancing so much that there again I was starting to feel kind of burnt out.
Yeah.
And I took over Benfield's teaching position at DePaul.
Okay, all right. I taught at DePaul. We have a lot in common, Curtis. This is hilarious.
Yeah, well, dang.
Yeah. Was that at the point, because I know that Benfield was at Northwestern, was he also teaching at DePaul at the same time? Or had he moved to DePaul at that time? Do you remember how that all worked?
They decided somehow at Northwestern that Benfield wasn't good enough and they needed principal players.
Well, that's quite the decision there at Northwestern.
So they, God, I hate dropping names like this, but they hired Joe Guastafestis.
Sure.
And then I think Benfield just sort of took a break from teaching for a while. Because he came. Actually, I'm not sure now. I didn't study with Guastafesta, which, by the way, is party pooper. I think in Italian, if you have a name that is a vegetable or a food or something like that, the story goes you were dropped off at an orphanage, and they gave you those kind of names.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe. So I was teaching at Northwestern and at DePaul and doing all the sub work, and then I got in the Philly Orchestra.
Okay.
And played for 6 years there and just crashed and burned. It's starting. Yeah, and I was one of those 8-hour-a-day kind of practicers.
You were doing that as well as playing in Philly?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was having to learn all the literature that I hadn't learned in school. So
okay.
I was, and I was just deadly serious about everything. So I was meant to be an 8-hour-a-day kind of guy, but I burnt out. So that was like 6 years there and 2 more years So after 10 years, I was seriously I'd had it, and all I ever knew was playing bass in an orchestra, pretty much, and so I quit the Philly Orchestra and went to teach at the University of Arizona.
Oh, okay. There's a contrast.
Yeah.
Living out in the desert.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be a soloist.
Oh, okay.
Like every household needs a bass soloist. That's still true, So they say. But I started the bass program there. Okay. Which was taken over by Patrick Nair.
Sure.
I think he benefited greatly from my grunt work there.
Sure, of course. Starting a program, all going.
I'd love to have the job there now.
It's nice place. There's a reason why so many people are moving to part of the country.
Oh, yeah. But, I got there and in probably 1 year I said, what was I thinking? Because all I wanted to do was get back into an orchestra.
Oh. And, what did you miss about it?
I missed the funny little guys up there with the 10-inch stick. No, it was just, I liked teaching. I loved teaching, but I really wanted to play. Yeah. So I hit the audition trail again. And from Tucson, I took a few auditions and got into the Milwaukee Symphony.
Okay. Hey.
You're supposed to say,
I played in the Milwaukee Ballet, so we're close. I have that's a one step removed.
Okay.
But we're pretty close. This is pretty scary, Curtis.
Well, I just happened, I was very happy in Milwaukee. It was, I thought it was a nice town.
Might be a little cold after living in Arizona a couple of years.
Yeah, well, I moved from Tucson to Milwaukee in January.
Oh, well, that's that. Yes, there's a contrast.
Yeah, that was a little rough. And thank God for those geodesic domes of the botanical garden.
Sure. Yeah. Get a little normalcy in there.
Yeah. I used to sit in those domes saying, "What am I doing here?" So I was there for 11 months and got in. I won the position in National Symphony.
Okay.
And as it turned out, that was a great move because I think it may be the most secure orchestra financially in the country because it was taken over by, they signed a deal with the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
So it's it's just very secure.
Sure. Yeah.
And unless a certain president sort of knocks it dead, kills all of the programs, it should be a sound orchestra forever.
Withstand. Yeah.
Yeah. So, gosh, I was there from 87, 50, I don't know when I was there. I've forgotten. Just before my first daughter was born, I moved to Washington, D.C. Stayed there until a couple of years ago.
Where are you now?
Everywhere.
No,
I actually went out on disability.
Okay.
Because I had a really nasty arthritis condition on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And so I sold my house on Capitol Hill and bought a house in Mexico and bought some houses in Florida.
Okay. Enough of those. Yeah. Enough of that cold.
And my house in Chautauqua.
Okay. And I'd love to dig into Chautauqua because, I've talked to a bunch of your former students, and just what you've done for so many bass players has been just so tremendous, and it's just obvious that that's been an important thing to so many people. So, when did Chautauqua enter your life? How did that all happen?
The first year was 1980.
Okay.
And then I didn't teach or play for a few summers, and then I started again in 1988 and went full-time until just very recently, and that my debilitating arthritis sort of I couldn't play full-time.
Yeah.
So I kept teaching though. So 1988 until I'm still teaching.
You're still teaching there. Yeah. So the previous year playing in the orchestra as well, right? And then doing the teaching.
At one point I had they had a high school orchestra and a college orchestra, and I taught 15 students a week and did master classes or sectionals for 2 orchestras and played the full-time schedule of the Chautauqua Symphony, which is a great little orchestra.
Yeah.
Talk about a burnout.
That's another burnout waiting to happen, right? That's an intense schedule.
I always keep my matches handy. Just light up another burnout,
It's something that and it's funny you mentioned Joe Guastafesti, because I, living in Chicago all those years, I was playing in the Civic Orchestra, and Joe was our sectional coach. And one thing Joe did, whatever repertoire we were playing, we went through and like every note of every piece we played and like talked about the dynamics, and talked about where in the bow, and talking about some of your students. That's like exactly what they described, like how you approached, I guess, in the sectionals for the orchestra literature. And I've never had anybody else, I've never heard of anybody else doing that besides you and Joe. And I've had something, I know, so you, hey, and I think that's so cool. And I feel like when I then went into the civic rehearsals, I just like knew what I was doing so much more. And so I, in my own sectional, have started to do that too. So I'd love to know, like, how did you happen upon that approach? Because I don't think most people do that with all the pizzicatos and all the pieces and talking through all those details. Like, why was that a part of your method?
Well, the rest of the year, I don't remember any schools that would do that. You did your technique classes maybe, and you did your solo literature, but I had just taught so much, and I got so not tired, but I had to say so many times, do it in this part of the bow, and, do this, and the big boys do this, and it was something that I realized nobody was getting.
Yeah.
It's such an important thing, and for audition purposes, that's exactly what you need to know, to be successful.
Right. Yeah.
In auditions.
Like that attention to detail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And really, you play it in this part of the bow, and you vibrate here, and it's one of my pet peeves anymore is not many people talk about vibrato either. And that's, it makes me crazy when people just, they'll vibrate. If they vibrate, it's not making any sense. It's just a wiggle.
Yeah.
It's not something musical. And I think the vibrato is besides sort of a detail to a phrase, it's also projects your sound.
Yeah, how do you think, because I totally see that, like how does that work? Is it like make the bass like stand out in the texture, or is it something with the instrument that helps? Like do you have any, like,
I think it livens it up.
Okay.
Without the vibrato, the wood is kind of half dead. And the line is like half dead, and the musical intent, is sort of not something that the listener understands without vibrato.
And some bass sections you see some people never vibrating, right? And then some people vibrating through, like in National Symphony or Philadelphia or any of the places you played. Like, is that something you all did in the section, or was it like just the straight tone kind of approach? Like,
well, it's easy to be kind of lazy.
Right, definitely.
It's, you don't vibrate unless the conductor's looking.
Okay.
Very often, it's like, oh, better wiggle, but it's, it's, and it is something that Well, it was one thing Ormandy liked about my playing was that sort of attention to detail.
Okay.
And he thought I was very musical because of those sort of things. And so it's like, well, hey, he liked it, so it must be all right. And it's, there are things that other strings do. And for bass players not to think that way is, it's like you're only half the player in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you look at the cellos playing a line and vibrating or doing something else, and the bass players are playing the exact same line an octave down, and then for whatever reason they're not doing that, or not,
Well, it's hard.
There's that.
It's hard to play good. But yeah, it's just something that I think it does help produce sound and line.
Yeah.
And you can hide your intonation.
It's another benefit for sure.
When in doubt.
Well, so you got that G major scale, just like you're warming up before you go in to play for Ormandy. I think you're, like that. Yeah. And is that still like you're working with these students at Chautauqua or other students? Like, did you teach them to do that before? Like, what other things did you teach people, like in terms of like warming up?
An F major scale.
F major. Hey, there we go. Pick up the flats and the sharps all covered.
Yeah. No, I wasn't much for all of those crazy scales, what are they, like idiomatic, ionic? No, it's just it's for warm-up purposes. I just thought you needed a couple three octave scales, and so E major, F major, and G major. And on a good day, maybe A flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was, I could sort of coerce just about anything out of those few scales.
Get those fundamentals and those concepts.
And there again, it's like so few students really get to work on the low end. So I've specialized in low end teaching.
Yeah.
Pretty much my whole career. Because that's not easy at all.
Definitely not. Are you thinking like just down low in general, or on the E string, kind of that like low end, getting clarity down there, or that sort of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's. In your solo playing, you're going to get that screaming register up there, which, I have full respect for people that can do that. But as far as winning a job, and that was my whole frame of mind.
Yeah.
Somebody else can teach you, to scream, but I want to teach you to wail.
That's a good T-shirt. We should print that up. I was talking with Larry Hirsch several years ago, and one thing he said is about, because students are so different, but it's like, what are some things that a lot of students seem to struggle with? And he said is like, everybody who walks into Indiana, almost all the time, they're 2 years behind in their bow arm than in their left hand. Like, did you notice stuff like that, or do you? You're still teaching at Chautauqua. Are there things that like, kind of like bass players like walk in? There's like a similar set of issues that you're working on with those young people who come to you?
Yeah, bow speed.
Bow speed. Okay. Okay. Too fast.
Slow bows.
Slow bow. Okay. Okay.
And some people in this room have heard me say many times that all you need is 2 good inches. And And it used to make me crazy to hear conductors say, more bow, more bow, more bow. And I'm totally opposite, It's less bow and slower.
Why do those conductors say that? I remember working with Baron Boy. I mean, he doesn't listen to this show, so it's okay. I can just have, but he would always say that he was not happy with us unless we were using full bows and like quarter notes or staccato quarter notes. And then our prep conductor would have us do that too. And so the basses were making this like whooshy, no fundamental sound. Like, why do they want that?
I'm not sure they really listen to what effect that has on the bass, because you lose all fundamental, when you overbow. And I still think it's just a slow bow speed allows the instrument to open up. I mean, I'm not talking about all bow strokes need to be slow, but it is for sound purposes. I think it allows the instrument to open up.
I was just talking with Gary Carr about slow bow yesterday.
I know him.
Yeah, we may have heard of him, right? And he said almost the exact same thing, because we got into he's famous for like slow bow and then also very close to the bridge, right? And what he was saying that is actually it's like the upper register becomes clear when you get there, but the lower register does too. And like some of those mids, which maybe we don't want, almost kind of recede into the background. So it sends this like low frequency out as well as the clarity, which I never heard that exactly, but like, that's interesting.
I stole that from him.
You did? Well, I mean, talk about, such a, what did you do to like develop that? Rob Cassinger, who teaches at DePaul now, he has all his students play just like metronome on, like right against the bridge, like how many clicks can you do, and then try to add one. Like, did you have any exercises you'd have your students do for developing that?
Well, probably not with a metronome, but it was still a slow bow, but with vibrato. I mean, it's
with vibrato. Okay.
Yeah, because it's really, there's not much. It's just without the left hand moving, your sound suffers.
Keeps things not moving over here, like tightens things up, kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you want to be able to get both hands working together. And I like a sound that is closer to the bridge, not because it tightens things up, but because it that's things get very muffled if you don't work in that part of the string. So it's probably a German bow thing.
But that we French barrel players can also benefit. Is it shocking to the students, like all that sort of like you hear more string noise when you get down there? I mean, does that freak people out? Do you have to like adjust people?
Yeah, I have to almost promise them that that string noise won't be heard out there. And you have to get out of these little tiny practice rooms because you get a sense of that's your sound, in these cubicles. And so I encourage them to get into as big a space as they can and fill up that space. And I like the notion of hearing your sound come off the walls almost.
Right.
It's and hear your sound out there more than anything else. And you've got to learn to project your sound, or you're this squeaky little, I don't know, nothing. nothing's happening if it doesn't project.
So again, chatting with your former students, I heard, and I love this, that you would go to the concerts of the student orchestra at Chautauqua and sit there and watch the bass section. And I guarantee you, 90% of people in that sort of position, summer festivals, are not there watching. And I'd love to know, first of all, thank you for doing that. That's awesome. And then second of all, do you have any reasons for doing that besides the fact that you just love music and want to be there? Was that for the next day teaching them some lessons, or why go to those performances?
It's a terrorist, sort of.
Nice. I like it. I like it a lot.
I'm gonna terrorize these guys. Well, it's like, don't you listen to me, or it's. It
was a strategy.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Well, I'm always out there cupping my ears saying, I can't hear you. And then everybody wakes up and vibrates and,
Gets closer to the bridge?
Yeah. They start doing all the right things.
Okay.
It's it's that conductor mentality, I'll show those guys.
You learned the stare from Ormandy.
Yeah.
But friendlier in your case.
Yeah. No, it was, I just, I really love teaching. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something dying in the orchestral playing that needs to be revived and make sure it's passed on. Mm-hmm. And so...
Why do you think that's dying like that? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, they're not thinking.
Yeah.
The teachers are so busy teaching other things. Mm. A bass soloist in every kitchen, doesn't leave you much time to teach orchestra literature.
It's extremely deep and detailed art in and of itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Although, I think, the Europeans would generally agree that we have the best trained bass players for orchestral purposes.
Sure.
So, I can't complain too much about it. Somebody's doing something right, but it's mo better.
Nice. Well, I've got one, and thank you so much for chatting with me. This is fantastic. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, actually, and it's cool. I'm so glad we ran into you on the street yesterday. And I never script out anything, but I have one question that I want to ask that I ask everybody, and so I want to go back to Interlochen. Okay, you in Virginia right there. And now you've done all you've done. We've got all these young people that listen to this. And so I ask this one of two ways. You got all these 16, 17, 18-year-olds out here that are going to they want to go to music school. They want to maybe get in an orchestra or maybe do something or maybe become another bass soloist in their kitchen or whatever. What advice, you've had so much experience teaching, playing, all this, give them a couple nuggets of wisdom.
Practice till you puke.
Okay. That's another t-shirt.
No, it's, you really do have to concentrate and practice. It's something that it could be your life, and it starts at a very early age anymore. Unfortunately, that's kind of dangerous for young bassists because it's such an ergonomically nasty instrument sometimes.
Right.
Thank you, Virginia. She's helping to make that more ergonomically friendly. But I think you have to, before you go and spend a fortune getting a degree, you really have to make a commitment to the art of bass playing. Mm-hmm. And if you're not willing to make that commitment, then really think about it. I suggest assessing where you are every couple years. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't made real big steps in the art of the double bass, just reassess your commitment.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Whole lots of money.
Yeah.
And but it's there are a lot of different things you can do with the bass too. The orchestra isn't maybe for everybody.
Right.
Like I would give, one of my legs to be able to play jazz, but that's the other side of my brain.
Yeah.
And it's like I wish I could play the piano with more than one finger.
Me too.
But there are lots of things you can do in music.
Yeah. Well, it's such a pleasure to meet you in person and chat and see you here at ISB, your first ISB, I think, I hear. Yeah. That's a rumor, right? Yeah. So great. And you're walking down the hall and you can't get 5 feet before people want some photos with you. So I want to thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And you've got a lot of adoring fans that want to go say hi to you. So
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Part of the magic of an event like the International Society of Bassists Convention is running into people like Curtis. It was Curtis's first ISB convention ever. And we just happened to run into him on the street. How cool is that? Next thing I know, I'm sitting down and chatting with him. And I guarantee you, if I went back and dusted off my early podcast guest wish list, I know Curtis was on there because I'd heard so many things about him over the years. And it was just great to sit down and have a conversation and hear these stories and talk about Chautauqua and his time in the National Symphony and Philadelphia. Thank you, Curtis. I appreciate you taking the time. If you are new to the podcast, go to our website, contrabassconversations.com. We've got hundreds of episodes going back over a decade. Great ways to dig into this archive are our app. contrabassconversations.com/app. We have an iOS app, we have a Kindle app, we have an Android app, and you can search within the app. So think of a topic. Do you like tango bass? Search for tango bass. You'll find our interview with Pablo Aslan. Are you into American roots music, newgrass? Type in newgrass. You'll find our interview with Daniel Kimbrough. Are you into jazz? Type in jazz. You'll find interviews with, you name it, Ron Carter, Reuben Rogers, Miles Mosley. That's a good way to dig into this archive. And if you enjoyed this conversation with Curtis, share it with a friend. I'm sure you have somebody in your life, bass player or not, that would love to hear these stories about Sir John Barbaroli and his pants falling down while he's conducting, or Curtis cutting his hair, or having to cut his hair to get tenure. Share this. I'm sure that you have lots of folks that would appreciate it. And you can share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter. That would be great also. Thanks again for tuning in. Follow along with all our ISB coverage at contrabassconversations.com/ISB. And we will see you soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.